right, let's do a little bit of shading on the toned paper pad. So I enjoy drawing on toned paper quite a bit. So of course, the big difference between working on toned paper and white paper is that you can use both dark and light media. These charcoal whites, so it doesn't really exist. I believe these are what you'd call chalk. But they're kind of fragile. They break pretty easily. So you got to be careful with them. But the nice thing about these, say, as opposed to, say, the Prismacolor pencils, which are nice as well, is that the chalk erases, which is nice. I mean, usually it doesn't erase always totally completely, but a whole lot better than the wax-based Prismacolor pencils. All right, so it's the same idea with the shading on the toned paper in that use the side of the pencil, go back to back, kind of from the elbow, pulling your elbow in the direction you want to go. You can lighten up on the pressure, get a lighter tone. You can go back over it. You can also do the little interlocking circles. Again, I'm using the side of the pencil, and then you just kind of keep going around in light scribbles, trying to fill in the holes, build up tone that way. One thing about this chalk pencil, if you use a lot of hand lotion or just have get grease and stuff like that on your paper, it really doesn't take so well. All right. So practice a little bit with doing a little bit of shading just to see what it feels like on the toned paper. Try a few different pencils. Right, do some, boundaries type things. So one of the things with the white pencil, like you could sketch with the white pencil, but generally I sketch with the graphite. But once you've done your kind of light construction lines, you can sort of erase them and then reestablish them with the white, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to mix the graphite and the chalk. It just usually makes a muddy mess, so try to keep them separate. Here, I'll just do a quick. Yeah, it just kind of turns into a mess, so don't do that. Don't mix them. So erase the construction line, and then I'm just putting a little shading in there, just like I was having you do before, where you just like sort of try to fill in the shapes or in between the lines and boundaries, and just work on not only just the basic stroke, but also on your accuracy. Like, how do you fill it in that, jam it in that little corner without messing up the overall evenness of your shading. And again, I'm trying to use the side of my pencil, avoiding distinct pencil lines. If you get one that's, it's not the end of the world, but your intention is to make it smooth. The whole reason we like gradation so much is because light has fall off. It doesn't stay, it doesn't stay constant very much. If you ever had to lit a green screen for video or something, you'll know how hard it is to light something totally evenly. So play around with that. Do some basic forms. Maybe. Oh, another thing you might want to try is just, so this isn't exactly shading, but this is just kind of doing this broken thick to thin line, and then follow along with a dark pencil and try to do the same thing, right parallel. But the important part is to think about which side of the line you're on. Because if you're trying to do a crack, something like that, you want the highlight to be on the opposite side of it in the light. So if the light's coming from up here, the light of the crack would be opposite of the dark. So it'd be on this side. Of course, certain areas it's going to be a little challenging to decide which, so you just kind of make your best guess. But in general, if you have it divot like this and the light's coming this way, the light is going to be on this side, the shadow is going to be on that side. So just keep that consistency. Don't be afraid to break the line like that. And you can always fill it in with the opposite one too. You can also do it like little divots or bumps, and then you can have like that again, but maintain that same idea of if it's going into the material and it's like a little pit, then the light's going to be on the opposite side of the shadow of it from the light source. If it's bumping up though, like that, light's coming at it, it'll be just like any of our other forms where the side opposite of the light is going to be in shadow, and the side facing the light is going to be in light. All right, let's do sphere. It's elliptical shadow. And it's going to be cut in an ellipse. Let's do the cylinder. Skinny cylinder. And box. That's going to be a problem with going off screen, huh? Here, let's put that back on screen. This up. The previous videos I was using a video camera and an SD card, and right now I'm trying to record, or I am recording with Zoom, and my iPhone is acting like a webcam. So it's a bit of an experiment, but it's nice that I can actually see right away what's going on the screen if I look up, that is. All right, let's try that. All right, so then this light would be like, that would be light coming down here, and it would go to that, and then this would be shadow of that corner, come here, and this would be a shadow of that edge, so it'd follow the same perspective. And that corner and light coming down. I don't know if I get it or not. That corner. Often you don't see this corner returning back, but it really depends on the angle you're at. Okay, so this is the shadow side. All right. I don't need that. And this is going to be the light. So if the light's above, the top plane is going to catch the most light. So I'll make that the lightest. And I'm going to erase those dark lines and then reestablish it with the chalk. especially this one right there. Then I'm kind of set up for this. Okay, so let's make some choices. So we're communicating here, so we get some options on what to do. So since I want to get the most contrast between the lights and the cast shadow, the cast shadow is dark, the lights obviously are light. If I start this shadow side in this corner up right here, I'm going to have the darkest part of this side abutting the lights. And then if I have it gradate out, it will be less dark by the time it gets to this cast shadow. And if I make that cast shadow dark, I'll get that contrast. I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. I'm just trying to use the side of my pencil. I start off with that linear, and then I go back in. I can sort of reinforce the areas, and I can kind of do a little bit of that. It's kind of like that light scribbling to get in the corners there. But you could experiment with where you want the gradient to start. Just think about that. You have control, that this isn't reality. This is communication. It's a language, and you're trying to communicate the idea of a box in 3D space. Casting a shadow. So the cast shadow will be darkest where it's closest to the object and gets the least amount of light pollution. And as it gets farther away from the object occluding the light or casting the shadow, the lighter it will be, and the more light pollution there will be, and also the fuzzier it will get. So the cast shadow would be sharpest, closest to the object, and fuzziest out there. All right, how about this? So this is going to be the lightest. That'll be a light side too. Decide where do I want the lightest to be. So why don't I can make it here. This should give me good separation between the shadow side and this background. Trying to avoid mixing the white and the graphite together. I'll go back in and sort of touch in a few areas, but what I want to do is I want to get that gradation, that feeling of light moving across form. Now on this side, if since I started here, I got that nice dark kind of highlight. I got some different options. I could try to do it here, or I could try to do it there. I could even do it here. What do I want to do? Oh, the choices. You know what? I think I'll just do it here, but I don't even need it to be that intense because it's the side plane. So this side I'm thinking is not going to receive quite as much light as this top plane. And the nice thing about toned paper is that a lot of it is like you get your details in and then you try to get back to home base, and home base is going to be the paper. It still isn't quite light enough for me. All right, all that good. Look at the screen there. All right, so with this here, I'll erase that light side, reestablish it with my chalk. Think about where the light is, perpendicular light source. So light will be more distinct the glossier the material is. I'm just going to try to keep this pretty simple and basic. So I'm going to just try to follow the form, keep it curving, smooth. That, yeah, that'll work. And then pencil, I think I'll use a 2B. About that ellipse that's cutting the form. So if you had a knife and you're cutting that and it's with like a lime or something, right, and you cut it, you'd have an ellipse, right? It'd be like a circle in perspective. But since we're only cutting it with light, we're only seeing half of that ellipse. Doing the core shadow, getting the gradient, then I can start bringing my shading into the shadow side, kind of following, trying to wrap my strokes around the form, trying to avoid the tip of the pencil, using the side of the pencil, try to make it smooth as I can. So down here it would have more, or it would get less reflected light, so it'd be darker, but I want to cheat it a little bit so that I can get the contrast with my cast shadow. You can also use that little bit of that scribbly sort of small circle type of things. All right, and I don't have to get it all done right away because I'll probably want to adjust it afterwards. My values, I mean how dark things are in art. Remember, value refers to how dark or light something is. Should be an ellipse. Let's see if I can make that feel more elliptical. Let's see. Make that a little bit more distinct. And reestablishing that back edge. Make sure it's nice and dark here. It's not that lines are bad. It's just that now that we're doing shading, what we're trying to do is see how much we can communicate with just that shading. Try to do that optical experience and then use the lines for the stuff that we can't really, that isn't really working that way. So it's kind of a mix of the two. Pencil. This one. And remember that the core shadow would be thickest and darkest, closest to the viewer. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to do that sort of a thing, like a crescent move, and the arrows are to make it point like it's going that way, folks. All right. I haven't got too much grease on these cylinders here, so I can get them to do what I want them to do. Take the pencil, okay. So I wanted you guys to do a skinny cylinder so you could think about the idea of like how big of a gradation is it going to be on a tight radius compared to a larger radius. The whole idea being the bigger the radius, the softer the form change, the bigger the gradation or the edge to going from the light to the dark, dark to the light. Foreshadow, back and forth, back and forth. that there. I can do a little more gradation over here on that edge. Turn the form. Nice. There, again, the cast shadow would be going. So if this is, the light was cutting the form more or less in half this way. That means the shadow would be going that. So we're almost looking at it exactly on the side. And if the light was coming down here, you would see a shadow of that. So it would be round at the end. Depending on how tall it is, might get super fuzzy. You might not even see that very clearly. Let's see if we can get that contrast between the cast shadow, the shadow side here. So have the cast shadow darkest right up next to the object casting it. Yeah, that sort of idea. Oh, light side. Go ahead and erase some of these things. Often there's like a little highlight right in the corner of these things. Something like that. Play this right there. Let's see if I can gradiate it out. All right, and then this, I don't really need very much, just a little fuzz on that. See if I can fix up that corner a little. No, that's good enough. And I'm holding the white already. Nice dark line at the bottom, that crack shadow helps ground it to the surface it's sitting on. So remember, I want to have this core shadow wider for the larger radius and narrower for the smaller radius. So break out your tone paper and give shading a couple of basic forms a try.